in Auckland. But, I don't think we want to say thanks to coronavirus because coronavirus is a bitch. But, you're now coming to Dunedin, so we'll get to see you here. And I think we've just gone live with Russell Howard. Russell, good morning.
Hello, mate.
Hey, thanks for joining us. Really do appreciate you jumping in and having a bit of a chinwag with us on the old the Department of Conversation. And as we were just saying, to let people know straight away, you are in New Zealand. I think originally, like the last year's tour, was it only going to be 3 shows and now it's 8? Is that right?
Yeah, I think it might even be 15 by the end because we're doing some gigs in New Plymouth and Palmerston North and various other places I can't remember, but it's all on my website. But yeah, so it was meant to be 3, and now I think we're going to be here for a bit longer. So it's cool. So I get to kind of travel around. I've never really sort of traveled around here. I normally just do sort of Auckland, Wellington, and Christchurch. So I kind of get to sort of see the real New Zealand. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting. So just so people know, I mean, maybe we can figure it out before the end of the chat, but on your website right now, it's got you sold out Auckland, sold out Auckland, sold out Auckland, sold out Wellington, sold out Kiritikana, Auckland, sorry, and then Christchurch available, Tauranga available, Dunedin available, see you there, Wellington available, another Auckland available. And that's what's on your website at the moment, just so you know. So New Plymouth and those other ones we're talking about, keep your eyes out. I'm sure on the website or the Twitter feed, they'll be announced, I guess.
Yeah, well, apparently it's quite funny. They're ready to go, but we can't put them on sale till Monday because those are the rules here. You can sort of but apparently, yeah, I know it's weird, eh? But hopefully we'll be able to sort of change that just because otherwise people won't know we're going. But the long and the short of it is I'm doing more than 3 gigs and I get to travel around this magnificent country. And if I have to spend 2 weeks in a hotel room with myself, who cares, man?
Are you by yourself? The missus didn't come?
Nope. My wife is a doctor. She's currently busy. Yeah. She's got a lot on. But I'm here with my tour manager, Kumar. But we're in separate rooms. We get to see each other in the yard for 45 minutes when we walk around.
So you're not even a bubble. They didn't even let you guys be a bubble, even though you travelled together.
We're in a bubble, but we can only bubble up when we're in the yard. You can't have your bubble in your room because that would make your bubble pop. But your bubble can be outside because then your bubble's in fresh air. But your bubble's at risk if your bubble is contained within 4 walls.
I can feel a whole new... It sounds like you're writing 15 minutes on being in a bubble while you're in New Zealand, it sounds like.
Right. Well, that's the funny thing. There's so many little things that kind of leap out of this because I was looking at couples. There's a lot of couples here, and you're in a hotel room for 2 weeks, and it stands to reason that you're going to get up to some mad sexual chaos. I mean, you're going to try stuff. You're in a hotel room. It's like, okay, let's see what we've got in us. Let's see if we can just mix up. Let's see. There's a few positions we can try, but I can't mention that in the yard. I can't sidle up to somebody with my mask on and go, "You guys done anal?" Have you? You know what I mean? So, but so there's little things that the funniest thing. This really got me, man. This is so New Zealand. That 7 days in, there was a little knock on the door. And I opened the door and there was a little brown bag there. And it said, "A little treat because you've made it halfway through your quarantine." And I was like, wow, what's this? You know what I mean? Is it going to be some hallucinogenics? a bit of meth? Are they going to freeze me in carbon like they did with Han Solo just to kind of pass the time quicker? But it was these.
Oh, pineapple lumps. Nice.
Pineapple lumps. See, where I'm from, a pineapple lump sounds like a disease. But they're all right. Let's not muck around. They shouldn't make sense, but they work. But I just love the fact that you get a little sweetie. Do you know what I mean? Like if that was in the UK, you'd never kind of go, "You've made it to a week. Here's a Twix."
Here's
just something.
Here's a packet of Twinings Earl Grey.
Yeah, exactly. It's a scone. You know, it's really lovely. So it's pretty cool, man. I can't complain. I'm trying to be pretty zen about it, and I'm trying to kind of write jokes and prepare myself for the tour, because the very fact that I'll be able to do 15 gigs to full rooms, to no sort of space and no masks is just so thrilling. You cannot know that, to the point where I think I'm going to come out with a bit too much energy because I'll have been like locked up like an animal for 2 weeks. That I think those initial shows are going to be like, and I'll have to get into the Kiwi vibe of just take it slowly.
Well, there's an easy way to do that. If you just, no matter where you are, if you walk out in bare feet, that'll put you in the mood, and then you'll be everything else will flow.
So is that the thing then? So you Kiwis, you don't wear shoes?
If you watch those, hey, I'm an American living in New Zealand, here's 10 things you didn't know about New Zealand. Sorry for my accent there, but one of the ones that always comes out is they wear bare feet to the supermarket. You know, there's no shoes on. So, yeah, it is a bit of a Kiwi thing. I mean, I lived in Auckland most of my life, moved to Dunedin 4 or 5 years ago. I'm still I'm in bare feet right now. I'm still in bare feet, you know, or jandals. The winter uniform in Auckland, the summer uniform in Auckland is jandals or thongs. The winter uniform is jandals and socks. So if you crush that vibe, then that might, like starting from the feet up, that might give you the energy to do the Kiwi show. Just saying, maybe.
But this is what I love. I love that ground level sort of wisdom you get. You only know that when you're here. Like I was talking to a comic called Ursula, and she was telling me, she kind of goes, oh, when you get out of here, people will be shitting you to death. And I was like, whoa, can I just stop you there? Because where I'm from, if someone shits you to death, I mean, that sounds like it'd be an awful way to die. like, do you know what I mean? I mean, it'd be a funny funeral. Do you know what I mean? Jahiro died, yeah, someone shit him to death. But apparently that means someone's annoying you. And I love that. As somebody that kind of works in language, to kind of find, I love those little peccadillos. And it's one of my favorite things. Like in Denmark, when it's windy, they don't say that it's windy, they say it's blowing half a pelican. So it's just those little, do you know what I mean? Those little sort of quirks that you only know and you only find them when you get to that part of the world. It just makes it so much richer rather than let's Google what New Zealanders do. Do you know what I mean? And it's just, you know,
well,
you would never see. They say shitting to death when they mean people are annoying you.
So there's lots of Kiwi vernacular, actually. I mean, the other one is if you hear people say choice, that means good, right? Oh, choice, bro. Choice. Yeah, choice is good. And everyone's bro. I call my daughters mate and bro. You know, everyone. Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking for you as well. It sounds weird because, I mean, I don't know you from Adam, but I'm excited for you because you're here doing a show on Waitangi Day. And fuck, mate, Waitangi Day is the best day of the year because it's our national holiday.
Right. And when is that?
6th of February. So you're in Auckland for it. If you're not connected yet, let me know. I'll hook you up with some of the boys. You have to do hangi on Waitangi Day. So hangi is a ground oven. So meal buried in the ground, cooked for 6 to 8 hours. Bring it out, beautiful. That's the Māori way. And Waitangi Day is our national day. And you're here for it, and I just think that's so cool.
So hang on a minute. So you put an oven underground and you cook. See, this is what I love. So presumably, there's been many dogs down the years that have been scolded, like that they just like they're sort of digging away, going, "This is hot. This is abort." What country, man? That's how cool is that?
Yeah, it's quite a common thing amongst the islands. Like it's called a lovo in Fiji. I think it's called an umu in Samoa. In New Zealand, we call it a hangi. You know, you get rocks, you burn the crap out of them, you make them red hot. They're in the ground. You lay all your food on top of them. You cover it with earth oven.
God, I tell you what. And what do you cook? What are we having in there?
Pork and puha, all sorts of stuff. Meat, lots of meat. It's interesting to think because before we were colonized by you fuckers, we were a country with basically no mammals. Right. So we had a couple of mammals like a bat and a seal, but there was no such thing as a cow or a sheep or anything like that. It was all birds. So it would have been full of birds and you know native plants. But now obviously it's full of pork and lamb and various veggies and stuff. It's kumara, or sweet potato. It's awesome. It is the best meal in New Zealand. So if you can't or haven't found anyone, let me know, and I'll hook you up with Hangi in Auckland on Waitangi Day.
That sounds absolutely fantastic. It's funny that you mentioned that. It reminds me, there's this spectacular kind of arrogance and naivety that Britain has had down the years. And I remember I was in Australia. We went to see these penguins that they come out of the sea and they kind of scurry to like holes in the ground.
Yeah.
And the guy was, that's because foxes try and eat them. So these penguins kind of come out and they're like, fucking hell, and they leg it before the foxes can get to them. And he sort of said, the fox was brought over here by British people because they wanted something that they could hunt. How hilarious is that? Just the idea of this kind of, well, what we should do, we should bring a fox. I just love the idea of them releasing the fox, and a crocodile goes, I'll take that. And then a shark goes, it looks quite interesting, I'll fucking eat that. And then there's a kangaroo going, that's what. Just the arrogance of the British to kind of go, well, we need to bring foxes, otherwise there won't possibly be animals in other parts of the world.
The one that always gets me is the hedgehog. So the hedgehog was brought to New Zealand so the English could have their gardens feel like they were their gardens back home. That's the only reason. And now I actually saw a headline the other day. I didn't, I'm one of those people that you see a headline, that's enough for me sometimes. And it said New Zealand has the highest population, I guess, per capita of hedgehogs anywhere in the world. I'm not 100% sure whether it's true or not, but whether it is or not, I mean, who the fuck brings a hedgehog to a foreign land just because they want their backyard to have hedgehogs in it? Now they run amok and eat all our native birds' eggs and stuff. Ridiculous.
I mean, it's utterly ridiculous, and it's almost like, in that respect, like the hedgehog has become like the New Zealand equivalent of a garden gnome.
Yeah.
That you just kind of like, and I've often thought that, like, who was the first one that looked at their garden and went, it's good, it could do with a tiny man holding a fishing rod. And then somebody must have then looked at that and gone, fucking la-di-da, we need to get one of those. How did that ever take off?
Yeah.
Like, but the world over, tiny men, fishing rods, gardens.
I've thought of doing a podcast series called The Day Before or 24 Hours Before. And I talked to AJ Hackett. AJ Hackett is the guy who's credited for doing the first commercial bungee jump and that sort of stuff. And I've always thought about, like, the day before the Spice Girls came out, what were they going through? What were they feeling? The day before AJ Hackett took that first jump. And you could do the same thing with garden gnomes. The day before the first fucking garden gnome. I mean, what was the person thinking, as you say, to go, this is what it needs?
That's so interesting. That's a really good idea, right? And just those, like, because I often talk, I've got quite a few mates who are musicians, and I'm sort of fascinated with that idea of when you're in the studio, do you know this is it? Do you get that feeling of like, this is a hit? Like remember, that song, There She Goes by the Lars?
Mm-hmm.
It fascinates me, that song, because you go, that could have been a hit in any era. Whatever it is, it's got it. Like, it's this, I don't know, there's something sort of magical, and it crosses musical tastes and borders, and it's very simple. There she goes again. And you go, did they know when they're in the studio that's a forever song? Do you know what I mean? Like I talk to a lot of my pals about it, and they, it's the same, because comedy, we create with, not for. So when you're putting a show together, you kind of come with like hypotheses of what you think is funny, and you present and you sort of amalgamate it, and it's this lovely sort of alchemy that takes place between the audience, and they make it funny with you, and it sort of swirls together. Whereas musicians, they have to create in solitude and then present what they think it is, and it's just like, I think comics and musicians have a fascination by the other's process. Do you know what I mean? Chris Martin could never be on stage going, it was all blue, nah. It was all green, nope. It was all yellow. It was yellow. That's what it needs to be. The next day it'll be. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing.
Well, you hear comedians, and I follow a lot of comedians in the US as well. You hear comedians talking about trying, like going to the comedy club at 1 o'clock on a Saturday morning because they want to try this stuff. As you say, they want to make it with the audience and see what works and what doesn't. Whereas you hear Dave Grohl from Foo Fighters talking about the difference between America and Europe is in America, in the mosh pit, everyone crashes into each other, but in Europe, everyone bounces. And so one of the songs he was in, he tells a story in Back and Forth, which is a fantastic documentary on the Foo Fighters if people haven't seen it. He tells this story about bouncing, playing his guitar, getting the rhythm to a song, bringing the rhythm to the band, writing the song on tour. And the first time they opened with it in Europe, the whole crowd went... But he wrote it in solitude. He wrote it in himself. He designed it for the crowd, and it worked. Whereas you say the comedians, you know, you go and you try something in a comedy club to see if it's going to be taken up or not. At least from a non-comedian, that's what it seems like from the outside.
Yeah, but that's exactly what. So most comics think like Dave Grohl, in that you're thinking, okay, how can I? The only way this can be received is through the people in the room, you know. So I have to make it for them, and then when you're putting a special together for like Netflix or whatever, you then have to make it for the person sat at home on the sofa. And it's a completely different skill because all the magic in the room is utter shit to the people at home, because it feels like you're watching a party that you haven't been invited to. The conversation has to take place between you and the person on the sofa. Like, it's like you don't want to have this kind of bit of witter with someone in the front row. It just means nothing. But I love that story about Dave Grohl, like the idea, but that's an example of somebody that is seeking such a level of musical evolution that he's like, right, how can I've got this idea that this song is gonna perfectly match the way Europeans bounce.
Yeah.
Like, fuck. And can you imagine that moment when the crowd felt it and they're like, he's in sync with our bounce? Like, it must have just gone off. And I think that's, I love it. I love stuff like that. When there's a friend of mine, Alex, that sort of said he loves stuff that is ambitious and finished. And I'm the same. Do you know what I mean? Like when somebody really goes for something and they pull it off. But like you just said, the only way you do that is by having the balls to try it and going to a comedy club at 1 a.m. or in front of 20 people and going, is this a thing? Is this a thing? And at the minute we don't have that. So you're sort of sat there just sort of accumulating all these ideas and these sort of comedic proposals. And I desperately need people. I've got so many comedy proposals to go, this? And I just know the crowd's it's going to be like kind of comedy Tinder. They'll be like, yep, no, yep, absolutely not. Maybe. You know what I mean? It's going to be like the first couple of gigs are going to be so funny. Me going, really? You don't think? No, I don't think. No, I do not think. So get rid of that. You know.
Your style, though. I mean, your Netflix special in particular. I was going to say actually before I talk about that, the other thing it would appear that you do as a comedian is when you're playing to the audience, you play to the audience. When you play to the crowd at home, it's different. Or else you can do what Greg Davies did and go completely so far one way it's farcical, where the start of his latest Netflix special is a joke that can't be played on Netflix, but they leave it in, and it's the introduction of him walking around, which I think is just hilariously genius in itself. And the first thing he says is, that's how you start a special, with a joke that can't be shown on Netflix. I think it's brilliant.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And the thing about that is that he's so calm and likable and funny that you just go with it, and that's the vibe. Like he's one of my best mates. He was at my wedding, and a lot of my family are quite small people. Like my auntie was 4'11", and the amount of people that took photos with Greg at my wedding, I cannot tell you. Like, and God bless him, he's literally going, yeah, come on then, roll up, like, come on, let's just get it done. So it was this great moment of like all my aunties are just, he's massive though, isn't he? He's just absolutely huge. And he's heard it all before. He was being so calm with them. Some people didn't even know what he did. That was the best thing. They're going, So my uncle genuinely said to Greg, who's a national treasure, by the way, in the UK. My uncle goes, so what do you do for work? like that he was like this oddity. He
You
goes,
must
"Oh, I'm a
you must have a big desk to fit you behind it.
It was exactly that. He goes, I'm a performer. And my uncle's like, what are we talking, circus? Like that. And he was like, no, I'm a comedian. He's like, bloody good on you. Good on you. Like, oh, Russ, well done. Well done. Do they have to pull the camera back so they can get all of you in? No, they don't. You know, it was, yeah, it's great, man.
I was thinking about, you're talking about like working your stuff in a room and what does work and what doesn't work. Watching a Netflix special, I watched it again the other day. I watched it 3 times. I love it. It's great. You got a really nice style on stage, and it's very different. It's very engaging, and I like the way that you. Not to blow smoke up your ass, but I mean, you're here, I can tell you. I like the way that you engage in storytelling as well as comedy. And I kind of like it. You know, I mean, I think most people would say kind of Dave Chappelle is one of the, kind of godfathers of comedy in the world at the moment, stand-up comedy. But it's a thing I see him doing as well. And you do it beautifully, telling sad stories about funerals and stuff, but injecting the comedy in there as well. And I was saying to someone the other day that it's really lovely when you can tell a sad or a serious story that might not be worthy of laughing at, but you can get through it laughing with. And it's something I see in you, and I really enjoy watching that on stage. It's very engaging, which is why I've watched your special 3 times, I think.
It's very sweet, man. But I think that's life, isn't it? That we've all had. See, laughter is such a magical thing, and it's a mechanism through which everyone does life. Everyone, every single person, irrespective of how you claim to be, has laughed at something they shouldn't have done. But societally, there's certain things that are allegedly, but sometimes all you can do, it's such a cliche, but it's kind of laugh. And in that case, so my granddad's funeral, that it was so sad because I loved him and he loved me, and yet in the middle of this, I had these kind of moments that I felt so proud to belong to all these people in this room. I felt like a genuine honor to have their blood, and I felt real love. So it was this weirdly uplifting day, despite the fact that we were losing this titan. And yet there were also moments of like my nan's hearing aid and she's shouting, and my brother behaving in the way he did. My cousin Stewart this didn't even make it to the special, but my cousin Stewart rocked up wearing a leather jacket, and everyone, and my brother was like, we were carrying my granddad on our shoulders, and my brother said, nice jacket, Stu. And our fucking shoulders went, you know what I mean? That thing of like, but it was and it was just like, hold it together like that. And there's a TV character called Lovejoy in the UK. I don't know if it made it over here, but he's kind of like this weird antique dealer detective from the 80s, and he used to wear leathers. So my brother's like, fucking like Lovejoy's rocked up of my cousin Stu, and we're all kind of like laughing at that. And then a year later, my nan died, and we were at her funeral, and fucking Stuart rocked up with the jacket again. And it was sort of this moment of genuine laughter, of like, but that kind of fucking hell, he's wearing the bloody jacket, but sort of connection. And I think that's what people do. It's like, fundamentally, people try and break the tension or lift the gloom. Or my brother having the audacity and daring to say, all right, Lovejoy, to my cousin Stuart in the middle of a funeral. He didn't know that would provide a moment of respite for all of us, to take away from the sadness, And I think it's sort of interesting, because comedy, laughter, doesn't really get sometimes the respect it deserves.
Yeah.
I don't think, but it is that lovely thing, particularly with mates, when you're lost in laughter, that you're crying, you're gone, you're in this sort of like mystical place, and it's almost like a societal orgasm, that you're all kind of like you're all like in this little mini orgy, and you're all kind of like coming everywhere, and there's kind of like all this sort of happy jizz that's kind of billowing out of you, you know.
I remember when Jon Stewart was doing the Daily Show, he was talking to, I don't know who it was, Brett Beer or someone on Fox News. He went in for one of those Sunday morning interviews, and they're talking about the laughter
Yes.
and the respect thing. You know, they were having this back and forth about, you know, what do you think I am at my highest? What do you think I am at my highest? And one of the points that Jon Stewart made was what he does is harder than what they do on the Fox News channel. Because not only do they accurately report the story, but then they have to find 17 angles to make it palatable in a comedic sense to the audience as well. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think that's the idea of a cheap laugh. I don't think there's any such thing as a cheap laugh. A laugh is a laugh, you know. And I think if people can get a laugh, more power to them.
Well, you look at someone like Connolly. Billy Connolly is a really good example, and I know he means a huge amount over here in the same way that he does the UK. That man has literally knitted families together. He has created, unwittingly, he's created connections like with families all across Britain, all across Australia, all across New Zealand, where you're all sat there watching the funny man with the long hair pretend to be a lion, or struggling with a prostate exam, or having trousers that are full of piss. Like, but you are all together and lost in laughter, you know. And that wasn't his aim. His aim was just to make you laugh. And yet, unwittingly, he's made families closer. It's a fascinating thing, you know.
I often wonder about comedians. Comedians have such crazy stories, and this is my naivety. I sometimes wonder, you know, if everyone had those crazy stories, everyone could do it. And I've always wondered the kind of chicken and egg conversation. Are you a good comedian because you've got crazy stories, or in other words, you know, person X could sort of do it if they were a half decent performer, or do you figure out crazy stories because you were a comedian? Like, do you figure out the comedy in the stories?
I think anybody can. I think that's proof at school. Like at school, everyone's funny. It's kind of like this free for all, and then you play with each other's stories. I think that's where you are a comic. That somebody will tell you a funny story, and then you're able to kind of sculpt it, I guess. Do you know what I mean? And you can make like a live sculpture with the images and with the words. I think that's the thing that you can kind of, or see something funny. I remember when I was a kid, my dad said we were trying to put a gate on a you know, near a field around our house, and he's like, put that gate on, and I'm like 12, I couldn't lift it up, and our dad just looked at me and went, stop looking awkward. And I looked at my brother who was 10, and then I pulled the funniest face I could at my dad, and I readied myself for the punch in the face, which didn't arrive, and he laughed instead. And I remember thinking, well, that's interesting. Like, do you know what I mean? That you kind of, and it's almost, I think the thing about being a comic is that beautiful thing that Larry David said, that where his wife says, why did you say that? I took a chance.
Yeah.
That's the difference. It is that thing of like the amount of times I've been with my wife and she's like, why the fuck? And it is just, I took a chance. And I would always respect somebody that took a chance. Like my brother has taken so many chances down the years, and not all of them pay off, but I love people like that. But I think fundamentally, I know loads of people. My friend Sam, that I went to school with, one of the funniest people I've ever met, but just is quite nervous around new people, so he can't share his funny. But he's an amazing comedian. Like, he could easily be a comic. He's so funny, but he's not. He's kind of not enough of a show off, or he can't he can't get relaxed. He doesn't have that kind of, I don't know, but he has an audience, which is me and my friend Al, and whenever Sam sends a text, it's like Chappelle's dropped a new special. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of like, but he's got this audience of two that love everything he does, that he doesn't need it.
Hey, the idea of testing things in the room. I'm still keen to do that because I was wondering when I was watching your special again the other day how you're received in America. I know you've got parts where you talk about going into America and going into the southern parts of America, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because when you tell stories, you get more northern with your accent. And for those of us in the colonies, we're fine with that. We get all that. What happens in America when you take your show there? How do they receive it? Especially, is there a language barrier?
Sometimes, yeah. It's, you sort of don't know until you're there. I remember doing the first time I just come off of my tour in the UK, and I did a week of comedy clubs in New York to try and figure out what was going to work. And it was just, there was stuff that was just, I'd literally done 4 nights at the Albert Hall, and stuff that I was closing with that was just getting blank stares in the States, and then other bits that would really work. So you sort of just figure it out, and then that's kind of what makes it a decent Netflix special at the end, because it's gone through all the iterations. Do you know what I mean? So everything I was doing on the Netflix special worked in Europe and worked in Australia, worked in New Zealand, and worked in America. So the bits that, you know, like apparently the word nonce doesn't really mean anything in America, and I'm not sure if that means anything over here.
The word nonce.
Yeah, so it means to be a paedophile is a nonce in the UK.
No, not here.
Exactly. So it was that thing that I had a bit about that, where that was the crucial punchline. You go, oh well, that just has to go, but was super funny in the UK. But yeah, you just sort of figure out, man. It's just like you know, they come with you. And yeah, bits work, bits don't. There's cultural barriers. There's things that are super funny in America. The like, for example, when I was there, I had a bit where I was taking the piss out of New York, just for being up its own arse. And New York's so good they named it twice. Did they, or did they have to repeat themselves because she wouldn't shut the fuck up? Which was a really funny joke in America. But then I would do that in the UK, and it's like, why are you having to go to New York? New York's amazing. Do you know what I mean? And it just didn't work because, but that, you know, so how people in Atlanta would feel about New York is that they would feel that sense of like, yeah, they think they're impressive. Do you know what I mean? So, but globally, that joke didn't work. So, yeah, you sort of figure it out as you go. And there's lots. What's frustrating? There's lots of stuff in Europe that really works that just doesn't work in the UK. And then I remember when I was in Denmark, I was talking about nicking a cow.
Yeah.
Right? And they were not laughing, and I couldn't understand why they weren't laughing.
Because what does nicking mean there?
Nicking means to stab.
Ah.
So, exactly. So I was talking about nicking a cow, and I'm looking at them going, why aren't they laughing? And they're looking at me going, why is he telling us this story? So, but even within that, once you've unraveled it, it's hilarious, because like they genuinely sat there going, okay, well, this must be a thing he's doing, rather than going, excuse me, mate, why the fuck are you telling us this story? So do you see what I mean? You can always get to the end of it. You can always figure it out. You can always understand it. And somehow that makes it funnier if you tell this story in Denmark and it dies, and then you acknowledge that, and then they you know what I mean? So it's such a live experience where you're kind of...
Do you know straight away though? Are you standing on stage and do you go to someone in the front row, hey, what does nicking mean here? Like, is it immediately that there's obviously a language barrier?
Exactly. And then you just go, why is everyone... And then he explains it to me, and then I kind of go, oh, well, that's really funny. And then you get into a completely different angle. And like, for example, like they've got loads of board game cafes in Denmark where people go and play board games like Monopoly, Risk, or Yahtzee, or whatever. And one of those in Copenhagen is called the Bastard Cafe.
Right.
And I was pointing out that there's going to be a lot of really, really disappointed bastards who are kind of rocking up and going, finally, a place where I can be my most bastard like. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're drawing swear words on babies' heads. They're tipping old ladies out of wheelchairs as they swagger to the bastard cafe. Finally, a place where they can be themselves, and it's just people playing fucking Monopoly. There's just these. This isn't how bastards behave. But that wasn't very funny in Denmark.
Right. No,
Because they were going, but that's what the bastard cafe is called. So you just got to take a chance. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't.
Hey, I was thinking as well, whilst you've been in New Zealand for several days, a week or so, I'm sure you've been, a lot of your television work especially is topical and is based around the news, been keeping an eye on what's going on in America. In your Netflix special, when you rewrite the national anthem, you talk about giving Donald Trump a lobotomy. I'm wondering if he's basically had a self-imposed lobotomy, especially in the last week around what's happened at the Capitol building, and if you got any thoughts around that, what you saw and what you're thinking is going on at the moment.
What was really fascinating was he said let's wander down to Washington, I'll be with you, and then he wasn't. And then, but the speech that he gave afterwards, where he said, you need to go home now, and you need to be law abiding and whatnot. That felt like he'd been given a chat by somebody. That really felt like, look, fucking cut your shit. It was so fascinating to see. I've never seen him. It was chalk and cheese. That's what blew my mind. Bill Hicks had a routine once about the state of American politics, which was, here's what the puppet on the right thinks, here's what the puppet on the left thinks. Oh, there's one guy holding up both puppets. And he had this image of Bill Clinton walking in, and suddenly there's these guys in shades, and they show an assassination of JFK from an angle that nobody's ever seen before. And then the tape finishes, and they say to Clinton, any questions? And he just goes, just what my agenda is. And it reminded me of that. It just felt like, whoa, like someone's had a word. And it felt like this could never have happened. But it did. And there was a flicker of like, oh, wow, what's gone on there? That's what it left with me. It was that feeling of like, geez, man, who's been able to get through? What's been said that's made him go, oh, okay, yep, sure. That was
I reckon there can only be one thing, and that's possible jail. Although I don't think those guys who are up the front talking, him and Giuliani and those guys, Giuliani might be in trouble because he talked about a trial by combat. The word combat can't really be spun any other way. It's not like we go, oh, my kid's got cancer, but, they're going to have combat with it. But you might say they're going to fight it hard. So the word fight has a relativity to it. I don't know if the word combat does. But all those words that they've used from up the front, I reckon that they'll be left alone. And as we're already seeing, all the guys under them, all the guys who went into the Capitol will be thrown under the bus. I have to say, what is delightfully, if you haven't seen it yet, go onto TikTok or maybe even YouTube and look up No Fly List. And a whole bunch of the people that stormed the Capitol building are now being put on a no-fly list because they're being accused of being domestic terrorists. And I saw one the other day, and it's disgusting. And if I had it, I'd play it. It's disgusting, but it just shows the mentality of the people. One of the guys, one individual male, was on a no-fly list. He was on the ground in an airport with police on top of him, screaming, "You're treating me like a black person."
Right.
I kind of go, that's the mentality. That's what people have been saying all this time, and now it's like there's no more filter. You're just saying out there the truth that everyone's been trying to get across for the last 5 years.
And you're sort of left with this feeling of like, geez, man, how are you able to try and reconcile a nation when people are so entrenched in kind of their ideologies? Like, how do you that is the undertaking. And you sort of, because even the truth now is the truth basically depends on the filter through which you receive it. Like, so it's that they remind me a bit of like if you've got like hecklers at a comedy club who are shit faced, you just can't reason with them. Do you know what I mean? You can't go, well, you know, the coronavirus is real. No, it's not. Like, you know what I mean? You're never gonna change their opinion, and yet it has to be someone's job to try and heal, and you kind of heal and reconcile. You think, fuck man, that's a tough old gig in the States at the minute, where people genuinely believe that there is this shadow government that has babies delivered to Oprah Winfrey's house, and they drink the baby's blood to look young. People believe that, you know what I mean? And it's just like, but they believe it. What blows my mind is that they think people like Hillary Clinton, apparently the reason why they look so young is because they drink baby's blood. But surely the proof of that is Hillary Clinton's face, because she looks like a normal 70-year-old woman. She's particularly youthful. Do you know what I mean? And you know what I mean? So it's like, to me as a comic, you're like, what the fuck? It's like, I would get it if it was somebody like super young looking, but she looks like a fucking 7-year-old woman, you know? But like I say, you're screaming at the wind and asking it to turn a different way. It's a difficult undertaking.
You look at work like the guy, Jordan Klepper, who's still working for The Daily Show, and the good work he's doing, kind of walking around some of the Trump protests. But I got a fright the other day. It might have been yesterday, actually. So this is 2 or 3 days after this attempted coup. And Glenn Beck passed across my Facebook feed, and there was some comment on there, about what should we do now to bring the country together after 3 years of, fanning the flames. And I, for the first time in my life, wrote a little comment on the thing saying, I remember that day that Glenn Beck donned the red cap and said, I'm now on Team Trump. And I'm like, you've lost all credibility, yada, yada, yada. And the number of people in America who responded to me saying, you can't call a victory yet, just wait and see what happens over the next couple of days. This isn't over. I'm like, fuck, these people are real. These people are real, and they're still thinking Trump's going to be president after the 20th. And it's not a small number of people.
And it's this, what's sort of saddening and maddening and bewildering is that it's exactly the same in the UK, but you have a situation where somehow people who have nothing believe that this billionaire is on their side. And it's exactly the same in the UK. You have someone like Jacob Rees-Mogg, who is this multi-millionaire who, in order to improve our country, we have to leave Europe. That's the only thing we have to do. This kind of bizarre creature that looks like he belongs wandering corridors in a stately home, is on the same side of, yeah, that's right, mate, we need to get our country back. And it's this horrible thing where people that in the UK, all they want to do is free the markets up so they can make a bunch of money. They bewitched people, and that's the hardest point. It's like, how do you win those back, and like, how do you bring people together? And you kind of think, well, it's sort of fundamentals. It's sort of sport. It's music. It's food. It's family. It's like, it's almost like you have to start building the things that are deeply human, because there's like, what the fuck's happened in the States where the only metric through which people are being judged at the minute is like, you blue or red?
Yeah.
Talking about that, like, there's a myriad of reasons and things that sort of define you, and it's such a small part, and yet that is the only thing. And the crazy thing for me, and I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but I kind of watch what's happening in America, and you go, why aren't you talking about coronavirus? Like, this is the story. It's like, and also with Trump, there was an opportunity for, if Trump had dealt with corona, if he'd have put all his mind and soul into that, he genuinely could have laid claim to be one of the greatest presidents of all time, because the 360-degree turn that he kind of went, it was like, it's just struck me as like, you have a real opportunity through which to define yourself, and you truly did put America first, and he didn't, you know what I mean? He just carried on with the same playbook. And you know, it's like it's bad in the UK, it's even worse in the States, and they're not even talking about it. Like, for all the flaws in the UK, we're still having a prime minister that's talking with a scientific advisor next to him, and you know, an army officer next to him talking about how we're going to get the vaccine. They don't even have that in the
Yeah,
States.
yeah, yeah,
Like, Fauci hasn't been on the news for months.
yeah.
There is no, there's no communication about corona, and that is the head fuck. That it's like, how can you be the leader of the country and you're still talking about the election? You have a job to do, man. You've got to, you know, you have to try and get the vaccine out. You have to try and test people. You have to try and do something. But it just seems so laissez-faire over there. It's freaky.
I like that you use the word metric as well, because that's something I often say to American contributors, or, you know, I've had a few sort of American right wingers on the podcast, and I always ask them, you know, is America the greatest country in the world? And they always say yes. And I say, what's your metric for that? You know, how do you measure that? Because if you look at most things that can be proven statistically, it's pretty hard to lay that claim up. And I had on got a professor here in Dunedin who's a professor of politics, and he specialises in American politics. And we had a bit of a mental breakdown the other day when we were going off over the Capitol building. And I said, can we stop talking about America being the greatest democracy in the world? The suppression of the votes, the gerrymandering of the borders so Republicans can get in, the country where, you know, the people, the party that gets the most votes doesn't become the president. All these sorts of things. It's all nonsense, and it's time to approach them like we should be, which is a very broken country in reality, not the greatest country in the world. It might be the richest country in the world. They might have the, you know, best military in the world, but they're not the greatest country in the world. And the reason you know that is very few other Western countries would want to emulate what's happening in America. And all you need to do is look at New Zealand. I mean, you are going to be the beneficiary of, and I say this touching wood because no one says this is over yet, but at the minute, how we've handled COVID. And you've got full houses coming up. I'm going to the Otago cricket game on Thursday where there'll be several thousand people watching the game. You know, this is a country and a government and a particular prime minister that has done it well. And again, I'm not being arrogant. It could be different in 6 months from now, but as of today, that's done it right.
Yeah, and it sort of strikes me it's that you've hit that sweet spot of liberalism and conservatism. That clearly, it's she's, you know, you're really strict, and it's really, you know, authoritative, but so that people can have a normal life. So do you know what I mean? It's this like, right, no fucking around here. These are the rules. But once you're out, yeah, cool, yeah. You know, and that's it isn't like, it's really funny sometimes the way that other countries are portrayed of like, oh, you know what I mean? It's all, do you know what I mean? It's super kind of liberal and it's easy, you know, over here. And you kind of go, no. There are rules in place. People follow the rules. And then once you've done that, cool. You know, and kind of also in Australia, you know, they've been pretty harsh on it as well. That's working. So what are we dealing with? 4.5 million people in New Zealand that are able to, as you say, currently live a normal life through a mixture of intellect and conservatism and liberalism. Like, do you know what I mean? And like, it strikes me that's the name of the game. It's sort of like, if you can find that sweet middle spot, that's what makes a country great. It isn't just GDP, you know. It's, I don't know, but the thing is, it's like, how do you get there? How do you get to that level where, you know, where people are genuinely together? I think the last time the UK was really, really tight was the Olympics in 2012.
Right.
That had a huge impact. And it's funny, isn't it? Like you say, little things like that, you know, oddly bring the nation together. It's like sport, music, food, football, comedy. It's weird, man, but those things, they do, like, you sort of think like, you know, Derek Trotter falling through a bar in Only Fools and Horses. You know, that was like this weird glue for the country. Do you know what I mean? Or like The Office, or Gavin and Stacey, or 40 Towers, or Monty Python. And like it's really strange that it would be great to have a time where politicians can be a bit quiet and just be like invisible referees, and they can let people get on with their lives, because it just feels like Brexit has dominated our news, and newspapers can write clickbaity articles about it and can convince people that this is a really important issue, where fundamentally people want to be happy, they want their loved ones to be okay, and they want to have a decent life, and it's that simple. Do you know what I mean? That you like, there was a survey done how people, I think something like 10 years ago, like what were major grievances of British people, and Europe was like 0.02%.
Right.
Fast forward 10 years, suddenly it's everything. That's what we got to do. If we leave Europe, it'll all be fine. And it's because it's that age-old thing as a politician. You find angry people, you tell them you understand their anger, you find something to point their anger out, and you walk away. And you just repeat that, and it always wins. And it's just time to kind of maybe turn the volume down on politicians, and just say, like, and maybe not make it front page, and just have a fucking break.
Oh, look, I think that's a really wise thing you say. I have to let you go because it's 1 o'clock, and that's the agreement with your guys that we're doing. I could feel like I could talk to you for another 10 hours, Russ, about that.
Well, let's hook up in Dunedin, man.
Yeah,
like, we'll come backstage. We'll hang out.
Well, look, here is the shows as they are right now. There's a bunch of shows in Auckland that are sold out. Christchurch available, Tauranga available, Dunedin available, Wellington available, another Auckland available, and then you have to go to Cheltenham in the UK. Oh no, that's sold out anyway. There's a second show in Cheltenham if people want to get across to the UK. I don't know why you would, but if you want to get across there. Thank you for joining us. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure. My apologies about the small glitch in the middle. I'll address that for future podcasts. But have a great stay in New Zealand. Enjoy Waitangi Day, and remember, if you can't find a hangi, let me know, and I will hook up the boys in Auckland to come sort you out.
Amazing. Thanks, pal. I really enjoyed that. Take care, buddy.